Hi, and welcome to our education program here at the Trauma Center and the Regional Burn Center of the UCSD Medical Center. My name is Ann Fulcher, and today I'd like to show you around our facilities and help you get a good understanding of the preparations we've been making for many years in dealing with mass casualties and any disasters. This type of preparedness has to include a broad-ranging plan. It includes a lot of people and many departments. Disaster preparedness is not new here at UCSD Medical Center. It's been part of what we've done for years. Since the events of 9/11, though, we, along with many other hospitals and institutions in San Diego, have taken a harder look at what we've done to prepare, and we have made some changes. Every year, the disaster drills are activated to simulate large-scale emergencies. Therese Reimer is the Director of Emergency Preparedness and Response. She oversees and coordinates the drill, making sure all aspects of care are integrated as a single system to respond to any of a full range of potential risks.
Our process for both preparedness, response, recovery, actually mitigation on issues ahead of time, preparedness particularly, has become quite focused and has gotten more and more sophisticated in subsequent years.
In a drill, we actually activate the entire hospital to respond, but what you'll find is some departments are more heavily impacted than others. We have extensive involvement of the emergency room, of course.
It is not a single entity, it is not a single department, even within the medical center. It involves the trauma unit,
wiggle your fingers.
Regional burn unit,
so we need to assess the fifth vital sign. So we'll ask
emergency departments, the laboratory, administration, nursing. It's a very, very broad development plan.
9/11 prompted the need, not only here at UCSD Medical Center, but at most hospitals around the country, to reevaluate their plan.
just like you came in again, okay?
Person to plan for the next several days.
Can we handle this? What else is it that we need to do to be ready? Are there other augmentations, or are there other necessities that we have to handle that included the plans, the personnel, the supplies, the sense of readiness for events such as this that involve terrorism? I think previous to that, a lot of the preparedness tended to be on natural cause.
Certainly we're reminded from the 1995 sarin gas attacks in the Tokyo subway that we are at risk for chemical terrorism.
Section is for taking off clothes, and personal belongings will be put into a bag here and marked.
And so from that point of view, I mean, we're much better off now than we were on 9/11. Most hospitals in the county could tell you that. And I think the important part is realizing that it's sometimes the nastiness of events that happen like this in the world that, if used correctly, actually fortifies us all to deal with things that could be recurrent or a particular problem from any cause. So the truth is, with a good exercise, you're actually activating the whole hospital, because even if each department doesn't individually manage a patient, they're still looking at their departmental plan, they're looking at the callback of their personnel. They're saying to each other, are we ready? Can we manage? What would the added focus be if we have an increased number of patients or need to provide an increased number of services to manage the disaster? And in fact, that's what you're looking for. It's all about practice. It's all about being prepared to be able to manage it if we have a significant event.
So there's only one patient. Okay, where's the second one then? So he's getting decon and he's going straight to trauma. Good.
In an event that includes mass casualties, the emergency department will be notified by the base station. A triage code is called, if appropriate, and 2,600 pages will simultaneously go off, notifying personnel.
When that happens, we begin to triage outside of the building.
Contaminated, I think somebody's going to need to monitor and tell you that before you get to look at them.
We convert our efforts in several areas. So our PACU becomes shock and holding. Our orthopedic cast room becomes an area for the walking wounded. And other things happen, including the opening of the Incident Command Center in order to provide the command structure for the management of multiple casualties coming into the institution.
During the drill, behind this door, the Incident Command Center is immediately established. It's the command center for the management of the entire event. Here, the command structure, as well as the section chiefs for administration, planning, finance, and operations, all meet to determine what needs to happen next.
So operations, do you have any other updates for operations? All right, thank you guys. Planning. What's that last part? So we're not able to talk to the OR?
Right. Medical director person
Okay.
to plan for the next several days.
Okay.
And the nursing unit leader is working with operations on
So
tracking
typically
location.
you will have an operations chief, logistics chief, finance chief, and planning chief. And they'll meet with the incident commander. They'll be supported by somebody from the public information, as a public information officer, supported as well by security, by safety, and a liaison officer who will be interfacing with agencies in the community as to the status of UCSD Medical Center, what the needs are, and what situation we're in.
In fact, frequently when we activate the Incident Command Center, we do have new faces in the command structure. This is deliberate. It's part of an educational process.
The good news about that is that you're preparing a larger number of people to be able to handle a disaster than to put all your eggs in one basket and have the same individuals all the time doing the same level of work. So our emphasis is to be as broad as we can with the education and training of our own personnel so that we have the ability around the clock to meet the need if that were to happen. What we're looking for are individuals who are comfortable with making decisions, understanding the structure, being able to come up with solutions relatively quickly, excellent communicators, being able to understand what the resources are and the priorities in the midst of an event.
The Hospital Incident Command System is the core of how we work as a team and manage a crisis.
UCSD handles trauma cases, burn cases, significant injuries all the time for the emergency department and other areas of the hospital. So not all mass casualties result in having to activate any kind of a code circumstance.
We develop our exercises, drills, and preparedness to meet the hazards that we think are the greatest concern.
Currently we're working out the process for transporting the non-ambulatory patient onto a roller system to run through the decontamination process.
Actually, the hospital looks at what's called a hazard vulnerability analysis, and this is a method in which we look at what we believe are our greatest risk here at our medical center. Amongst them includes earthquake, includes mass casualty, chemical exposures, labor actions, potential for infectious disease or epidemics, and perhaps the need for other services like decontamination or radiation exposure, something like that that would require additional resources.
Behind me are storage containers that contain decontamination equipment. The decontamination unit will be activated if there's a chemical exposure. The risks for chemical exposures are potentially from industry, transportation, accidents, and other events. The decontamination unit will be used to wash the victims.
A lot of additional equipment that is the protective garb, the personal protective equipment that's required for the decontamination team. Those pieces of material and equipment and protective gear are passed out by one of our safety officers in the midst of an event. And these are individuals who have a background in health and safety, environmental health and safety, and can be watchful.
We have a very robust trauma system within San Diego County. Depending on the accident, the site, the number of injured, and the victim's needs, the base station will disperse the patients to the trauma centers and to other hospitals.
I think in addition, we have to also recognize that beside trauma issues, we have a lot of shared resources that will happen in other subspecialties. Neonatal units would be an example, burn units outside the region, dialysis units, those kinds of things. And that's important because in a mass event, you may be dealing with all kinds of ages and needs. And knowing mass events can be directly from a trauma, but can occur as well, certainly from natural disaster that would result in many, many patients, and the need to share resources, both technically on the skill side as well as supplies.
This is a post-anesthesia care unit, or PACU recovery room, and it becomes a shock and holding area in the code triage of the exercise. The types of patients you'll see here have come through the trauma unit and are now in shock and holding, potentially on their way to the operating room.
There are as well patients who are coming back out of the OR. It could potentially be individuals who are an overflow or seriously ill that we're monitoring and watching for stability until we can get them into other services within the hospital.
It's a very busy place during the exercise. In fact, the whole arena is extremely busy. Keep in mind that during the exercise or a potential disaster, we won't necessarily have a large number of trauma or burn patients, but victims who may require a less acute level of care.
That's the good news. But what it does mean in an exercise is that we really do in fact drill and exercise those areas so that we're better prepared to handle that kind of enormity if it were to occur.
Patients would be evacuated only if there's a need.
These are to help us transport the patients, so we easily lift up all together. 1, 2, 3.
For example, a collapse of a portion of the building from an earthquake or a fire. But the good news is, it would be highly improbable for us to need to evacuate the whole hospital in any circumstance.
Most evacuations in the first place are lateral to begin with, just for example into another smoke department or compartment on the same floor. The need to actually bring individuals outside of the hospital altogether would be remote. That said, we practice for that and we prepare for that. So we have such things as evacuation chairs that are mounted on the walls in the hospital. We use evacuation sleds that are under some of our beds so that we can evacuate the bed, the mattress, and the patient on it down the stairwell and outside.
Therese Reimer explained that from her point of view, what occurred after Hurricane Katrina was one of the worst case events ever in the United States. However, she believes the potential for something of that magnitude to happen in San Diego County is very remote.
I think our greatest risk on the natural disaster side is from an earthquake. And in my mind, I believe that even a massive earthquake would not topple everything. So while we could have tremendous damage and a very, very high need to reconfigure what we were doing and provide care to thousands of people, I doubt that we would be in a situation that we would have to do a mass evacuation of the county in the same consequences we saw out of Katrina.
At the end of the drill, we review the event to find opportunities for improvement. Every time we complete the exercise, we can look back at the process and see which categories need to be strengthened and which can be continued as is.
If you do that and everybody has experience along the way, then we're better off to handle the real situation. So that's truly, from my point of view, a great success. So these exercises really provide an opportunity to work together, to evaluate it together, to say, gee, this works, that didn't work, we need to do something a different way. A great benefit.
We have a responsibility to be prepared and able to provide medical care. Our hospital must also be able to work with other agencies, such as medical suppliers, blood banks, fire and police departments, and the County of San Diego and other local resources.
I think the biggest point of all of this is the more exposure, the more practice that you have, the better able people are to deal with an actual emergency situation. Because in an emergency, people do what they're trained to do. I think the citizens of San Diego are in great hands. You know, I know a lot of these people in this county who are involved in emergency preparedness who are involved in our trauma system, who are involved in our subspecialties within medicine and surgery, in the regional burn unit, and I have great confidence in their ability.
We all need to understand that readiness for emergencies starts at home. We have responsibilities within our own homes to manage how we're going to prepare for our families. How are we going to get water, food, shelter, medications, and where and how our families are going to gather.
And if we can do that and people are prepared individually in their homes, then as a community we're better able to meet an event. They also need to reach out and know their neighbors, because there may be people right around them that don't have the same abilities or the same perhaps physical capacity to be as prepared as the next person, might need a little bit of assistance, that sort of thing. So I believe that hospitals have a responsibility, healthcare institutions, I think industry has a responsibility, I think businesses have a responsibility, I think families have a responsibility, I think individuals have a responsibility. And if we all did that, that'd be super, okay? But we're well on our way to that. That's the important part to recognize. The second thing is that there's always room to make it better. But we're going to do that as a group, as a community.
I'd like to especially thank Therese Reimer, the Director of Emergency Preparedness and Response, who gave us the big picture of UCSD Medical Center's disaster preparedness. Thanks also to all the staff and faculty who contribute their expertise in order to provide excellent medical care to all of San Diego County. My name is Ann Fulcher, and on behalf of the Trauma Center and the Regional Burn Center, I'd like to thank you for joining us today.